Okay, so we just did Ezekiel 25, Edom, Moab, and Ammon. And now we're in Ezekiel 26. Now, as normal, I would like to give you some backdrop, because one of the things you're going to see in Ezekiel 26, two main things. You're going to see a lot of denunciation or destruction being prophesied against the king of Tyrus. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. And that destruction in Ezekiel comes from the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar. Now, it can be sometimes confusing, and I want to help you with this, because in Revelation, for example, we know that destruction is coming on Babylon, right? Again, Revelation chapter 18, we're looking at Revelation 18, and let's begin at verse 1 of Revelation chapter 18, and go from verse 1 down to verse 5, Revelation chapter 18 from verse 1 to 5. And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, is become the habitation of devils, and the hole of every foul spirit, in the cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and Yahweh hath remembered her iniquities. So we can see, obviously, in our day, a judgment being pronounced, but in this case is by the 144,000 on the current system described as Babylon. Also, of course, we know from Revelation chapter 17. Revelation 17 from verse 1 to 5. Revelation 17 verses 1 to 5. Again, talking about Babylon, notice again, and there came one of the seven angels, which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore, that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon the scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked in gold and precious stones and pearls, and having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Again, you see a pronouncement of judgment on this entity, on the forehead of this woman representing a religious entity that has been called aside, this case called aside by Satan. This one is called Babylon. Mystery, Babylon the Great. And of course, there's Revelation chapter 14 as well. Revelation chapter 14, and beginning at verse 8, Revelation chapter 14, beginning at verse 8 and going down to verse 11, Revelation 14, 8 through 11. Notice what it says. And there followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of Yahweh, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever. And they have no rest, day nor night, who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. So we can see again a pronouncement of Babylon. So now, generally speaking then, even, and of course, when we look at the prophets, Jeremiah particularly speaks very strongly against Babylon with this same type of pronouncement. In fact, it's the same thing of ancient Babylon for modern Babylon. Now, this is the case where the Most High is using Babylon as a religious and political system that's combined, that is against his kingdom, against his covenant, against his empire, against his law, and of course against his people. And so these pronouncements being judged, being pronounced against this spiritual Babylon, this culture, this system, this culture which we now dwell in, we can see that. Now, so that every time pretty much you see Babylon mentioned or the Chaldeans mentioned in the Bible, and it's generally in this context, them being the enemies of the Most High, and being the enemies of the Most High, them going to be facing eternal destruction. Now, there's one exception to this. Okay, I want to make sure you hear me. There's one exception to this. Whenever you hear Nebuchadnezzar being mentioned, it's completely different. Okay, whenever you hear Nebuchadnezzar being mentioned with Babylon, it's completely different. And let me show you Jeremiah, I think it's chapter 25, Jeremiah chapter 25. Let me just make sure of that. I think it's chapter 25. Jeremiah chapter 25. Yes, it's Jeremiah chapter 25. All right, so I'm going to read Jeremiah chapter 25. I'm going to begin at verse 8. And I'm going to go down to verse 11. Okay, I'm going to go down from verse 8 to 11 again. Jeremiah chapter 25, verses 8 to 11. Notice again. Therefore, thus saith Yahweh of hosts, because ye have not heard my words, behold, I will send and take all the families of the north, saith Yahweh, and Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant, and will bring them against this land, and against the inhabitants thereof, and against all these nations round about, and will utterly destroy them, and make them an astonishment, and an hissing, and a perpetual desolations. Moreover, I will take from them the voice of myrrh, and the voice of gladness, the voice of the bridegroom, and the voice of the bride, the sound of the millstones, and the light of the candle. And this whole land shall be a desolation and an astonishment. And these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. So, as you can see here, in this context, Babylon is the servant of the Most High. And so you can tell the difference when it's the enemy of Most High, when it's the servant, simply by one thing. Whenever Nebuchadnezzar is mentioned. When Nebuchadnezzar is mentioned, and he says here very clearly, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, my servant. So whenever Nebuchadnezzar is mentioned, Babylon is now acting as the Most High's judgment instrument. You understand? So whenever Nebuchadnezzar is mentioned, it's not Babylon, the enemy of the Most High anymore. It's Babylon acting as the instrument of judgment upon the nations by the hand of the Most High. Does everybody follow me with that? Testing 1, 2, 3, because I don't want you to get confused, because generally speaking, again, when Babylon and the Chaldeans are mentioned, they're the enemies of righteousness. They're the enemies of the Most High. They're Satan's kingdom. But when Nebuchadnezzar is mentioned, it's different. When Nebuchadnezzar is mentioned, they're being used as the sword of the Most High. And I want you to also notice that he uses the direction of the north. We're going to talk about that. He uses the direction of the north. When he uses that with Nebuchadnezzar, I'm going to show you why that's representing the Most High. So in this case, Nebuchadnezzar is a representation of the Most High, bringing judgment on whoever he's pronouncing it against. In this case, it's the heathen and his own people. So, okay, so everybody follow that so far? I want to just make sure that that's clear. So, and the north is significant. There's two directions that are significant in the Bible. North, that represent the Most High. North is the main one, and east. Okay, north and east. And I want to show you a couple of references to that before we get into Ezekiel chapter 26. Let's look at Psalms 48. Psalms 48. Also, I'm going to bring up this, but let's look at the Psalms first. Psalms 48. And I think it's a short psalm, if I'm not mistaken. Psalms 48. Yeah, it's relatively short. But let's look at Psalms 48. I'm going to begin at verse 1 and read down to verse 8 for the sake of what we're looking at and what we're talking about here. Psalms 48 from verse 1 to 8. Yeah. Watch the direction of the north. Watch this. Great is Yahweh, and greatly to be praised, in the city of our Most High, in the mountain of his holiness. Beautiful for situation, the joy of the whole earth is Mount Zion on the sides of the north. The city of the great king. Yahweh is known in her palaces for a refuge. Lo, the kings were assembled, they passed by together. They saw it, and so they marveled. They were troubled and hasted away. Fear took hold upon them there, and pain as of a woman in travail. Thou breakest the ships of Tarshish with an east wind. And as we have heard, so have we seen in the city of Yahweh of hosts, in the city of our Most High. Yahweh will establish it forever. Now, so he uses the Zion as his throne, as his kingdom. And interesting, in Jerusalem, on the north side of Jerusalem, the middle, there's 3 gates, and each gate is a tribe. And the north side of Jerusalem, the middle gate is Judah. Isn't that interesting? So Judah is the middle gate on the north side, and we know that Judah, out of Judah come forth what? Mashiach, the Messiah. Okay? So he uses the north. And also, of course, we know Satan endeavored in his heart to take over the throne of the Most High, to be a God on this earth. And notice again in Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12 to 14, Isaiah 14 from 12 to 14. Notice again, Isaiah chapter 14 from verses 12 to 14. Notice what it says. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thy heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of the Most High. Notice this. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. So you can see here, the Most High is being in relation to the sides of the north. Okay? And so the reason that he fights against the sons of Japhet, he mentions that they come out of the north because they're trying to compete as gods with the Most High. Okay? And so he brings Nebuchadnezzar, who is instrument of judgment, out of the north, because that's representing his kingdom. Everybody follow me so far? So he's going to bring judgment from representing Nebuchadnezzar out of the north. Now, Messiah said himself in the Gospel of Matthew that he himself, when he returns, he's going to be coming from the direction of the east. Again, Messiah is coming from the direction of the east. Notice again, Matthew chapter 24. Matthew chapter 24. We're going to begin reading Matthew 24. Let's see. From verse 25 down to verse 28. Matthew chapter 24, from verse 25. Actually, from verse 25 to verse. Let's see, from verse 25 to verse 31. From verse 25 to verse 31. Notice again. Behold, I have told you before. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in secret chambers, believe it not. For as lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. Then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in the heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Pretty plain and simple. So he's saying he's coming from the east. So the north and the east are the two directions that are very prominent in the Bible, and they represent the Most High bringing messages, or bringing even himself from these directions. Again, let's take a look at Amos. Amos chapter 8. Amos chapter 8. Amos 8, this is a well-known verse, but people don't really notice those two directions in here. In Amos chapter 8 from verse 11 and verse 12. Amos chapter 8, verse 11 and verse 12. Notice again, Amos 8, verse 11 and 12. Behold, the days come, saith the Most High Yahweh, that I will send a famine in the land, not a famine of bread or a thirst for water, but of hearing the words of Yahweh. And they shall wander, watch this, they shall wander from sea to sea, from the north even to the east, they shall run to and fro to seek the word of Yahweh, and shall not find it. So they're going to be looking for the word from the north and from the east, and it's going to be too late. It's not going to be able to be given, because the Spirit of the Most High will have withdrawn from the earth, will have withdrawn from the people, and there'll be no more spirit to guide them in truth anymore. So now that's when it's over. That's when the plagues begin to fall. So you can see the east and the north are very important. And when Nebuchadnezzar is mentioned, you're dealing with the Most High raining judgment on people and places and nations that are rebelling against him. Okay? So you're going to see that as we're studying Ezekiel chapter 26. Now, about Tyrus. For the next three chapters, chapters 26, 27, and 28. For the next three chapters, the Most High is going to center on Tyrus. Tyrus is going to be the center of the object of the scorn and judgment of the Most High on these next three chapters. So we saw Edom, Moab, and Aram. The next you're going to see is Tyrus. Now, what does Tyrus represent? Tyrus is the root of the word Tyre, from where you get Tyre and Sidon. Y'all heard of Tyre and Sidon? You recall how Tyre and Sidon, a woman came from Tyre and Sidon and came to Messiah and asked for a blessing, and he said, it's not good. I came for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. I can't cast the children's bread to dogs. And the woman said, truth, I am a dog, but please bless my child anyway. And he said, okay, woman, great is your faith. Be it unto thee even as thou wilt. And her daughter was healed. Well, Tyre and Sidon Tyre has a long history with Israel. And I'm not going to go into all the scriptures. You can look them up. But the king of Tyre at one time was a man named Hiram. Hiram is very important because Hiram helped Solomon build the temple, the first temple. It was Hiram that provided workers and supplies that helped Solomon build the temple. Okay? Now, why? Somebody might ask, and it would be a good question, why would a heathen be involved with the building of the Most High Yah's temple? That's a good question. Hiram was not a heathen, and this goes against all of these brothers out here talking about, well, it depends on who your father is. No. Hiram's mother was of the tribe of Dan, and his father was of Zidon, and his father was rich in gold and silver. And so Hiram became king of Tyre. And he was rich and he was powerful. And Tyre is a port city on the ocean. And if you know, like just in generally big cities that are on ocean ports, they're generally very rich. Why? Because you got ships coming in and out of there, right? And they're bringing goods in and out of there from the water, right? So you got people bringing ships, merchants bringing ships from the water. Like that's why New York City is a major city. That's why, you got Hong Kong is a major city. These are cities that are on the water, on the edge of nations there, because that's where, you got large ships and boats coming in. San Francisco is another one. Here in Washington, D.C. is another one. So you have lots of trade coming in. So Tyre was like that. It was a centerpiece of trade. And so it was very rich. And so what ended up happening now, Hiram was very close to David. Him and David, the Bible actually calls him a lover of David. Like he loved David. And so when Solomon became king, Hiram just wanted to know what you need. I'm going to help you with this king, with this temple, what you need. And so Solomon, employed him to help with labor and with materials to build the temple, the first temple, the glorious temple of Yah. And so Hiram was actually an Israelite. His mother was a tribe of Dan. His father was from Tyre in Zidon. So now, later on, they started becoming enemies of Israel. And Tyre Hiram was, of course, he died, and he had sons, and they had sons, and that kingdom was still rich, but now they became enemies of Israel, and they rejoiced when Israel was destroyed. Now, again, Tyre was a center of economic activity. So in the center of basically the then known world was Tyre. And so everything is coming in and out of Tyre. People are bringing stuff to Tyre to sell and to send out to other nations as exports, and imports are coming in to the nation to the continent through Tyre. Okay, so Tyre was a very wealthy city in the center of everything, and Tyrus, the king of that area, is representing Asatan, and Tyre, the nation, is representing the whole world, the whole earth, and this whole system of economic Babylon that we have today. And so what you're going to see here, you're going to see, and as the Most High describes Tyrus, you're going to see what I said. He's describing Asatan, and he's using Nebuchadnezzar representing himself as judgment on Tyrus. Okay, everybody follow me so far? So he's using Nebuchadnezzar representing himself as judgment on Tyrus. Okay, so now I'm just breaking this down so that when we read it, you understand what's going on. But as you start to see, as they describe Tyrus more and more in the next 3 chapters, 26, 27, and 28, when they start to describe this brother, you're going to see, he's talking about Asatan. Okay. Okay. So let's look at this in Ezekiel chapter 26. Let's see. I'm going to begin at verse 1, and I'm going to go down to verse 7. Ezekiel chapter 26, from verse 1 to verse 7. And it came to pass in the 11th year, in the first day of the month, that the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, because that Tyrus had said against Jerusalem, Aha, she is broken, that was the gates of the people. She is turned unto me, I shall be replenished. Now she is laid waste. Therefore thus saith the Most High Yahweh, Behold, I am against thee, O Tyrus, and will cause many nations to come up against thee, as the sea causes his waves to come up. And they shall destroy the walls of Tyrus, and break down her towers. And I will also scrape her dust from her, and make her like the top of a rock. And it shall be a place for the spreading of nets in the midst of the sea. For I have spoken it, saith the Most High Yahweh. It shall become a spoil of the nations, and her daughters which are in the field shall be slain by the sword, and they shall know that I am Yahweh. For thus saith the Most High Yahweh, Behold, I will bring upon Tyrus Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, a king of kings from the north, with his horses, and with chariots, and with horsemen, and companies, and much people. See, so again, he's using Nebuchadnezzar, his servant, to destroy Tyrus, because Tyrus was against his people. And in the real terms, he's going to use, of course, Messiah, his servant. Messiah is the servant of the Father. He's going to use Messiah, his servant, to come and destroy this whole Babylonian kingdom, because they are against his people. Does that make sense, brothers and sisters? Testing 1, 2, 3. Are you following me? Okay, so Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, is representing the Father's kingdom. And he's actually representing the Messiah in this particular thing. Because the Father is going to send Messiah, as you saw in Revelation 19, to bring noise. Messiah is going to come bring the noise here. And so he's going to bring it, and the Father, through the Messiah, going to destroy this whole system. And so Tyrus is representing this system, and he's going to destroy Tyrus. And notice he called him King of Kings from the north, right? King of Kings from the north. And that's important. Now, in actuality, Babylon is modern day Iraq. Now, Iraq is the northern part of what they call the Middle East, but it's not north. Like Iraq is not like Finland or Sweden, or Russia. It's not that far north. Iraq is it's south of the Caspian Sea. It's what they call the Middle East. Okay. So, but he's using the direction of the north to show us this is a representation of him, of the Messiah, and of the Father when they come and they bring the noise. This is Nebuchadnezzar's going to come. So he's saying, I'm bringing Nebuchadnezzar against you, Tyrus. He's coming from the north. He's a king of kings, and he's going to destroy you. He's coming with his horsemen and his companies and much people. Isn't that the way Messiah is going to come? Let's look at the parallel. And it's amazing how much of Ezekiel is actually referenced in the book of Revelation. I would say that if I had to pick one book that represents Revelation the most, it would be Ezekiel, because Ezekiel is representing in the book of Revelation many places. Here's another one. Revelation chapter 19. Notice Revelation chapter 19. Notice the reference when we just read of chariots and horsemen and companies and much people. Again, Revelation chapter 19. I'm going to read from verse 11 down to verse 16. From verse 11 down to verse 16. Notice what it says. Revelation 19:11 through 16. And I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse. And he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True. And in righteousness he doth judge and make war. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his heads were many crowns. And he had a name written that no man knew but he himself. And he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood. And his name is called the Word of Yahweh. And the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses, clothed in fine linen white and clean. And out of his mouth goeth a sharp sword, that he should smite the nations, that with it he should smite the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron, and he treadeth the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Al Shaddai. And hath on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So you can see here the same imagery coming again from the north, coming with the armies of heaven and destroying spiritual Babylon that we are living in today. Praise the Most High Yah. So now, I see. Okay, I'm gonna wait. I see Sister Josie's posting those scriptures. Yes, it's Revelation 11 chapter 19 from 11 to 16. Revelation chapter 19 from 11 to 16. So she's posting those scriptures. Okay. So now we go back to Ezekiel, and we can see now he's going to continue to pronounce judgment on Tyre. So let's continue. Tyrus. Ezekiel chapter 26. Back to Ezekiel chapter 26. We're going to begin at verse 8. And we're going to go down to verse 14. Ezekiel 26 from verse 8 to verse 14. He shall slay with the sword, talking about Nebuchadnezzar on Tyrus. He shall slay with the sword thy daughters in the field. He shall make a fort against thee, and cast a mount against thee, and lift up the buckler against thee. He shall set engines of war against thy walls, and with his axes he shall break down thy towers. By reason of the abundance of his horses, their dust shall cover thee. Thy walls shall shake at the noise of the horsemen, and of the wheels, and of the chariots, when he shall enter into thy gates, as men enter into a city wherein is made a breach. And with the hoofs of his horses shall he tread down all thy streets, and he shall slay thy people with the sword, and thy strong garrisons shall go down to the ground. And they shall make a spoil of thy riches, and make a prey of thy merchandise. And they shall break down thy walls, and destroy thy pleasant houses. They shall lay thy stones and thy timber and thy dust in the midst of the water. And I will cause the noise of thy songs to cease, and the sound of thy harps shall be no more heard. And I will make thee the top of a rock. Thou shalt be a place to spread nets upon. Thou shalt be built no more, for I Yahweh have spoken it, saith the Most High Yahweh. See, again, he's reiterating, once this kingdom is destroyed, It's never going to rise again. So that's why we can know right now there'll be no more sinful kingdoms. Once Messiah returns and he puts an end to Asatan's kingdom, there'll be no more rise of any rebellion against the Father ever again. There'll be no more rise against the Father, no more rebellion, uprising against his law, against his government, against Messiah. That will not happen anymore once he destroys it. And that's why when we're talking about the Hebrew awakening, it's a major, major thing, because it is the beginning of the end of this Babylonian kingdom. It is the beginning of the end. And Asatan well knows that. So he is trying his best to divert, deceive, destroy any instruments or agents that are being used by the Father to bring forth the awakening and the message of the present truth. He's doing all that. He's pulling out all the stops because his life is on the line and because his kingdom is on the line. Okay, so he's going to literally, Asatan is literally going to fight to the death. And all of his servants are going to fight to the death. That's what's going on. That's why, brothers and sisters, if you're going to be in this truth, really, if you're going to follow the word of the Father, you got to be all in. Asatan is all in. He is not playing. This is not something to be played with. So when you decide you want to walk in the spirit of the word of the Most High, go all in. Go all in. Don't play around, because if you want to play around, I just tell people, don't play around with this thing, because if you want to play around, go out in the world and do your thing. Okay? That's exact, Sister Akath, that's exactly what they're doing. You are noticing recently Hebrew Israelites being in the news. That's a distraction. That's a distraction that's planned. It's a distraction that's planned. Pay no attention to those people or what they represent. They're trying to be a distraction so that when the true ones come out, they can say, oh, they're like them crazy guys that were on the street. Don't get caught up in that. Don't get caught up in that. Stay with the Father's Spirit and with the word of the Most High, and you will never go wrong. Okay? Stay with the Father's Spirit and his word, and you will never go wrong. Don't follow men. Don't follow camps. Don't follow camps or churches or denominations. Follow your Father and his word. His Spirit will never lead you wrong. He will always lead you in the right way. Always, 100% of the time. As an individual, when you are seeking to give him glory, he's going to make sure that you are being led in the right way, because you belong to him and he watches over those that are his. I'm not even, exaggerating that. The word backs me up. He watches over those that are his. Okay? Takes care of those that are his. Let's continue. Ezekiel chapter 26 from verse 15 down to verse 18. Ezekiel chapter 26 from verse 15, 18. See, brothers and sisters, the more we learn to trust the Father, the more peace we will have in our lives. That's the truth about it. The more we learn to put all things of life in the Father's hand and leave him with them and trust him and believe that his Spirit is going to guide us in every place we're going to go, the more peace you're going to have in your life. Nothing will move you. Nothing will rile you. You'll have great peace in your heart when you allow the Father to take over. Let's continue. Let's read. Thus saith the Most High Yahweh to Tyrus, shall not the isles shake at the sound of thy fall, when the wounded cry, when the slaughter is made in the midst of thee? Then all the princes of the sea shall come down from their thrones, and lay away their robes, and put off their broidered garments. They shall clothe themselves with trembling. They shall sit upon the ground and shall tremble at every moment, and be astonished at thee. They shall take up a lamentation for thee, and say unto thee, how art thou destroyed, that wast inhabited of seafaring men? The renowned city, which was strong in the sea, she and her inhabitants, which caused their terror to be on all that haunted. Now shall the isles tremble in that day of thy fall. Yea, the isles that are in the sea shall be troubled at thy departure. Also, I want to bring out one more thing. You see a lot of references in this scripture. If you noticed in the chapter that we are reading now, chapter 26, and you will continue to see this, you'll see a lot of references to the sea. Did y'all notice that? And you're going to see a lot more. What does the sea represent in Bible prophecy? What does the sea represent in Bible prophecy? You'll see a lot of references to the sea. That's right. The sea represents people. That's right. It represents multitudes, nations, peoples, and tongues. That's exactly right. Let's take a look at Revelation chapter 17, just for the scripture. Revelation chapter 17. Revelation 17. And let's look at, let's see, 15, verse 15. Revelation 17, verse 15. Revelation 17, verse 15. Notice what it says, Revelation 17, 15. And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And again, let's look at the same scripture that he's referencing here in Revelation 17. Let's look at verse 1. So it says peoples, nations, multitude, and tongues. And let's look at verse 1 of Revelation 17. It's referencing that. And there came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, come hither, I will show thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. So this great whore sitteth upon what? Peoples, nations, multitudes, and tongues. She is the queen of all. She controls all. That is the Roman Catholic Church. And it sits on a beast, which represents a government. It's the Roman Catholic Church. And here, Tyrus sits in the midst of the seas. All the seas come to her. Everybody from the sea. So he's referencing again Satan as he's ruling the earth in the midst of peoples, nations, multitudes, and tongues. Same thing. Let's continue back to Ezekiel. Let's finish the chapter. Ezekiel chapter 26 from verse 19 to verse 21. Ezekiel chapter 26 from verse 19 to verse 21. For thus saith the Most High Yahweh, when I shall make thee a desolate city, like the cities that are not inhabited, when I shall bring up the deep upon thee, and great waters shall cover thee, when I shall bring thee down with them that descend into the pit, with the people of old time, and shall set thee in the low parts of the earth, in places desolate of old, with them that go down to the pit, that thou be not inhabited. And I shall set glory in the land of the living, and I will make thee a terror, and thou shalt be no more. Though thou be sought for, yet shalt thou never be found again, saith the Most High Yahweh. See, as the Bible talks about, the heathen are going to, in the end of it, it's going to be as if they never existed. The heathen and sin is going to be as if it never existed. When the Most High finishes his rework of us and of the earth, it's going to be as if sin never existed. There's only going to be one place that you're going to know that sin existed. There's only going to be one sign on the earth that everyone will know that it existed and what it did. What can somebody tell me? What is the sign that's going to only be the only sign that's going to exist? That's right. It's going to be the wounds on the hands and the feet and the head of Mashiach Yahushua, whose name will be changed. But it's going to be the wounds are going to stay on him forever to remind us forever what sin cost and what it did. That will be the only sign that sin ever existed on the earth, because when he finishes wiping out sin and sinners, when he finishes burning it all up and making it over and redoing this thing, it's going to be in its original state of glory and beauty, in its original state of symmetry and balance, in its original state of loveliness and holiness and righteousness, and there's going to be no time that Satan was ever set his foot upon it, nor anybody that was under his spell ever set their foot upon it. There'll be no sign of it. Praise the Most High Yahweh. We'll stop here.